Thanks for joining us for this special Patreon-backed interview episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, and I'm joined by one of my favorite people, not just in board gaming, but in general, the one, the only, Mike Fitzgerald. Mike, how are you?
I'm good, Alex. Boy, that's an introduction you don't get too often.
I mean, I could have done more if you wanted.
No, that's plenty. That's absolutely plenty. It's good to talk with you too. I'm a big Dukes of Dice fan, and of course, when I found out about your interest in baseball highlights, I've been tracking you closely as well. And we've become good friends. I think it's great to the kind of people you meet and get to know in this hobby is a wonderful part of it.
Mike has eyes everywhere, by the way, everywhere. So Mike, for folks who may not know as much about your background, I don't know, the quick syllabus, if you don't mind. Syllabus, that's not the right word. Quick resume. There we go.
Okay, well. When I was a kid, I played games. I mean, from a very young age, card games. I became a chess player, got pretty good at that for a while when I was a teenager, and then realized, to keep going past the master level, you need to, spend all your time on it. And I said, that's not going to happen. So, but I always played games. And so we go way forward even. In fact, I tried to figure the other day, somebody asked me, trying to figure out how old I was and I really started this. Well, I played games all my life, but here I am in like 1993 and I'm already, 40 something? 40 something. And I discovered Magic the Gathering just came out and I just flipped and I decided to make one myself. So I made Wyvern and got it with US Games. But I had never designed anything before. I'd worked on some games. I'd play tested for Avalon Hill a lot and fooled around, but that was my first game design, released in '94. And then several other trading card games that Wizard of the Coast published, one that WWF at the time published, Raw Deal. And then after about four of those, it's really tough to do anymore. At least I found. I mean, they're really hard to do. I love them. I've just started playing a new collectible game because but it had been a long time. But because I think it's the first one in a long time that's really good. And then I started doing regular games. The Mystery Rummy series and all kinds of games for U.S. Games. Some of them mass market or commission things for different products. They did a game for A&E and that kind of stuff. And then just the last few years that I've retired from radio, which was my sort of money-making job during all these years, I'm now full-time game design, so I spend a lot more time, and I'm trying more ambitious projects. So I did baseball highlights, I had Diamonds published, and I just completed a legacy game that I have signed, and so I'm just digging deeper into what's available there for game design now. Altogether, I've designed 75 published games.
Wow!
And maybe 15 of them I'm somewhat proud of. So I don't know how that works as a batting average, but that's the way it is at this point.
I'm going to play contrarian here. What is the one you're least proud of?
Well, it's funny when you play the problem with playing your games after they're published is when you see a flaw, you can't do anything about it. Unless it's a ongoing game, where you could maybe adjust something with an expansion. But so I don't play a lot of them. I'll tell you, on some levels, it's a couple of the commission games where a company will say, "Listen, can you do a game on this subject? And we need it in 6 weeks." And when I was younger, I took on some of those projects. I figured, it might be interesting and fun. It's a little, it's an advance or something. I didn't know how the game would do after that. So I tried some of that, and I'm just not very good at putting under that kind of pressure. And I think looking back, some of those designs are weak to me. So there isn't what's it called? I can't remember what it's called. I don't remember the exact name, but it's from US Games. It actually is still for sale. It was a presidential election game. And I used the actual presidents throughout the nation, history. And you were sort of investing in trying to get them elected in sort of a secret bidding kind of way and stuff. And I think it had potential, but it was just such a rushed job. So for me, that one, and then I really felt bad about one of my trading card games. Wizard of the Coast called me and said they needed an X-Men trading card game for their first movie in 6 weeks. And try to do a trading card game in 6 weeks, it's very difficult. And I did it. I used dice. I asked if I could use dice. I said, sure. And it was a fight the bad guys in the middle kind of game, which had not, this is a long time ago. So it had not really, that mechanic hadn't been done a lot. So I had because, what am I going to do with X-Men? Have some people be the X-Men nemesis? I didn't want that. So I put them all in the middle and everybody was an X-Man, playing. So, but you have all the issues with that kind of game, the timing of who gets credit for the kill and, sort of like the things that Adrenaline, for instance, solved, I thought, in a pretty good way right now. So I had my own way of solving those things then. But it was such a rushed job, I felt bad. Now, what happened was it wasn't my fault that the game didn't do well, at least what they say, because the boosters were not ready when the movie opened.
Oh,
so they only had starter sets, and they had a comic. What I am proud of, they had a comic that came with it. I'm in the comic book. I'm in an X-Men comic book. I thought that was cute. So, but so the game, the kids would buy the game, and they'd actually like it. It was fun. At least it was a lot of fun. And then the boosters weren't there. So within a couple of weeks, once a movie ends, there's no more interest in the trading card game anyway. So they sort of discovered that about a typical movie, game related thing with a movie. So, but I guess those two, and of course there's one that I actually like the gameplay of, and so do a couple other people, called Hooyah, the Navy SEALs card game, which does sell a little bit, but it's an horrible matchup of theme and idea. And that was a call the day after bin Laden was killed from U.S. Games and said, Mike, we need a family card game about the Navy SEALs, and it has to include the mission to kill bin Laden. So I said, wow, there's an interesting matchup. First of all, when you think Navy SEALs game, certainly in the hobby game industry, they're going to think, oh, this is going to be cool, little missions, and you got miniatures, you got something going on that's going to be shooting stuff. And of course, there's none of that because it's a family game. And then when you're playing a family game, you don't expect this mission where you're trying to infiltrate this area and kill bin Laden. So, I mean, there were a lot of missions in the game, and Richard Lawney has told me he and his group love it. So I guess if you're willing to abstract enough, because it is kind of a get enough cards together to get past each obstacle in the mission, and it's a co-op. And I did solve the alpha game player by making somebody the lieutenant who had to make the decision of when to go after the mission. But anyway, so the gameplay wasn't terrible, but boy, it was a bad idea. I probably should have right from the start said that's just not a good fit, with theme and style of game.
So, Mike, as a fellow former broadcaster, I retired a little younger than you, I guess.
Well, you're not retired. You're going to be back on at some point.
Is that what you think? Okay, it's possible.
That's what I think. Yes, I think it will happen.
All right, I don't know for sure, but what from the broadcasting industry did you bring most over into your design? Where do those areas meet and blend in a way that proved most useful for you?
I don't think there's much in the game design process, but in surviving in the game industry and enjoying the game industry, I think there's a relationship, because in broadcasting, as you may know, I had many more years of it. So people that come up to you or people that are going to reach out to you are telling you how horrible you are.
Oh yeah,
they're flaming you on the radio boards in New York City, or they're seeing you out somewhere. Oh, you think you're funny? You're horrible. Oh my God, you're awful. I said, well, you know what? What's nice about radio? I said, you can press the button and listen to somebody else. That what became my role. But they say, no, I like the show, I like the music, but boy, you're just awful. So, and of course, I used to have to sit in on focus groups, and I was programming, and they're talking about you, and you're behind the glass. When I would do a morning show or something, they'd go in and they'd say, oh, this guy thinks he's good. And so they blast you all the time. So I developed a thick skin. In the game industry, though, this is a wonderful part of it, but you have to put it in perspective. When people come up to you at conventions or whatever in the game industry, they're coming up to you to tell you how much they love your work. They're so wonderful. I love this game. I love that game. I play all of your games. You would think if I hadn't had the other experience, I might be thinking, wow, I mean, why aren't my games selling 10 million copies? Everybody loves all my games. Well, it's because the people who don't like them aren't going to come up to you and say they do or anything. So you get a whole different look, at elements of it and how people respond. And I love the way gamers respond. It's always nice to hear something nice, And I wasn't a big fan of how the radio people would respond. And I think talking on the radio for so many years, I talk a lot, so I schmooze, and sometimes it's overkill. And I encourage people just to tell me when I should shut up, because I was paid to talk. So, the shut up part is hard for me sometimes.
On the full-time designer side, because I know that there's plenty of folks who listen to this who are either have designed a game but haven't necessarily gotten it published, or maybe have an inkling that they want to be a designer. For folks looking at that side of things, just economically, how tough is it to make it as a full-time game designer?
Pretty much impossible. I mean, it's not something you should even consider looking at. I mean, it should never be a part of your equation. Oh, I'm going to start designing games so I can live on that. It's not going to, that's out of reach. Now, you can even take somebody like Matt Leacock. It's very difficult for Matt Leacock. Now, Matt has a huge hit, right? I mean, a huge hit, Pandemic. I will say there's somebody I know who did do it, but how many of us can just be there at the right time and have a great design and have it work like Richard Garfield did, right? So it's just, I know it's harder probably to do that than to star in the NBA or Major League Baseball or the NFL. There's more people that do that than are successfully making a living as a full-time game designer. So that's how hard it is economically. But while you're doing another job like I did for a long time, it was nice extra money, and I love doing it. I mean, I did it because I love doing it. But occasionally I'd have a game that did well, and sure, that was nice. That was extra that helped us, help the family. Now that I'm doing it full time, I have a bit of a safety net because I'm old enough for a pension and Social Security and all that stuff. So that takes care of the main stuff. But the game stuff is fun to have some travel money and do some other things. But I strongly advise people not to go into it to make a living in that sense. Now, if you're working full time for a company, a publishing company, that could be a different story. Although I know the wages, at least in the past, have not been very good. Maybe they're getting better with the sort of the boom of it that's going on. But for designers, it's always been tough.
Note to self, or anyone else out there, don't do it. Don't quit your job. Just
yeah, no, I would really advise against that. I mean, I had my first game, Wyvern, did very well, but it was one of the early trading card games, so they're all doing well. So I got this huge check, and I'm thinking, oh, wow, if this could continue, I don't have to do anything else, right? But, even at that, of course, I was a little older even then, so I knew, well, that's not likely to happen. And Alan Moon is the one who told me at the time, because he hadn't had Ticket to Ride yet, but he was determined to always be full-time in the game business. So he worked for Avalon Hill. He did some other things. He scrapped together editing, designing, working at the game companies. What a great man. He just decided, this is what I love to do. It's all I'm going to do. And I was so happy, and everybody who knows Alan is, when Ticket to Ride happened, because you couldn't find a person who deserved it more. Because he would not give up. So I'm going to say, if it's in your blood, it's like what I used to tell radio people, because it was in my blood to do that. If it's in your blood, you're going to do it. You're going to have to do it. If you don't, you're going to regret that. But with game design, I'm just saying, I don't advise you to do it as a full-time thing. But if you have to, you have to.
I think you just don't want the competition.
That's right. I'm trying to dissuade everyone else from designing. But as you know, as game designers, we're like theater people. We root for each other. Anytime there's a hit game, it helps all of us. Anytime a designer does something great, especially if they open up a new genre like Donald did with Dominion, Vaccarino. It opens up everything. Look at how, I've taken advantage of that with baseball highlights. I mean, so when new ideas come, wherever they come from, it's fantastic for all designers in the hobby. And, we can all have fun with them. And it is, since there's not an exorbitant amount of money involved, I think that helps also. Most of us can be very generous and really pull for everybody else.
You mentioned baseball highlights. I can't go too long without just diving headfirst into any updates there. So, Mike, I don't know how much you can or want to talk about some of the new stuff you're working on with baseball highlights.
Yeah, I can say it's in the final. They have the art. I saw some of the art yesterday. It was really fun. They have a new artist, and there's a stadium expansion, and there are two. Is it 215 cards? I think in the end, yes. I think it's 2 more 15 card expansions, but don't hold me to that. I can't remember right now because I did them months ago. It's like they've been in process for a while. So the stadium ones are going to feel a little bit like the coach ones. Now, some people feel the coaches are kind of swingy or whatever. I like them. I think they're a lot of them are just one-shot things during a game, and then your coach is gone. You don't have the coach for more than one game. But I will admit, if you draft them and you play sort of competitively with them, I think they can work okay. But they do certainly add another factor to the game. You're going to lose a little bit of control if you like to play the game as a pretty much a strategic competitive card game. So stadiums have a permanent effect when you're at your park. So each player has a stadium. So that stadium will say blah 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 happens, and that's what's going to happen. Both players get the advantage of it or the disadvantage of it depending on how their team is set up. So you'll know. You reveal your stadiums, and we like to do a draft of those too. You can go just deal the 2 and keep 1 for each player, or you can draft from 4, take 1, that kind of thing. You do it any way you want, but you'll know the stadiums you're in, yours and your opponents, before you start buying players. So that becomes an interesting factor, I think. In how you shape your team. But again, it's going to change the game. So I made some that are pretty wild, meaning that, hits don't always do what you think they do, or different situations. And I made some of them more strategic kind of things that some, the more control players might actually enjoy. So, so there are going to be 10 stadiums. And then the other 2 expansions, one is called Home Cookin', which gives your players immediate action hits and things when they're at home, which is every other game, or depending on how your setup is. And I think that's interesting. At first glance, it might seem, arbitrary or whatever, but when you're playing with them, the idea is, okay, I've got this guy now. This is a visiting game. Do I throw him in on deck and wait for me to be home to take his advantage? I try to make the on-deck space more interesting with these 2 expansions, to sort of say, this isn't just about putting a glove there if you're a visitor, or putting some big guy there if you're home that you get access when it's necessary. So I think these do change that, at least give you other ideas. The other expansion is called Double Trouble, where all the players in that expansion have 2 immediate actions. So some of them will have an offensive one and a defensive one. Some might have 2 defensive or 2 offensive, and they go in an order, and you can do both of them if they apply. So they're fun. I think they're interesting. Yeah. Playtesting went well. I made sure the costs were in line with the other stuff. So we'll see. There's some good buys. I always try to put some really good buys in there that better players will see, and then there's some that, they're still costed the same way, but you'd look at it and say, maybe that's not so good. But one of the fun things about this game is people have a different list of who they think the best players are, which is always fun to see.
And have you been surprised at how many expansions you've been able to get out of this? Because this was a game that you weren't even sure was ever going to see the light of day.
Right. I'm surprised that the company wants me to keep doing expansions. So, and I'm very and this is all pleasant. I'm pleasantly surprised that more expansions are needed, and I'm pleasantly surprised the game doesn't slow up in sales. I mean, I'm used to games that they come out of the chute, they do really well for a year, maybe a little more, and then they're gone. They dribble after that, a couple of months here or there. But this one started slow, and then pretty much, and they haven't told, I should check with this, but for about the first year plus, every month it sold more than the previous month. So that was because word of mouth was starting to get out, I guess. And of course, the big hurdle is that it's baseball. But I wanted to do a baseball game. So I every company that I showed it to wanted me to change the theme and the name, but I said, no, I don't think, Dwarven Zombies, I just don't get the feel that's going to feel like baseball. So I'm not going to do that.
Dwarven Zombies, that's the next Mike Fitzgerald project. You heard it here first.
Yeah, I don't think so. But so the idea is to change everything because people enjoyed the game. And that would encourage me. I never got a response that the game needed work. They just said, oh, this is really fun. Come back and play more. And then they would say, well, we can't do it because it's baseball, it's two-player, whatever their reasons were. And then I finally found a company, with Eagle Griffin that had a couple of really big baseball fans running the company. So I thought, well, that's probably a good thing. So they were all over it, and we had a great time producing it. And so I am. I mean, and it keeps going. I mean, I thought 7 might be it, and then I get a call, and now we're going to need a couple more. And the biggest surprise to me was the starting teams. I mean, I made 4 starting teams. I thought I was done, but we're up to 24 now. Now, understand that there's only 12 unique, and the other 12 are duplicates. But it turns out what players want is a team to start with that has a banner of a state or a city that relates to one of their favorite teams. So they kept saying, where's this team? Where's that team? So we've now gone overseas. The other thing that surprised me, the game is doing well in Europe. So we have the UK team. We have, there's one team that involves the Caribbean. I forget the exact name of it. That just came out. But anyway, we went all over the world at this point, and who knows what might be next in that area. So those things have surprised me. Yeah, the success of the playing mats, it's just become one of those games that, it appears to have a real place in the hobby game market. And, we're actually making a brand new product to make it easier to access the market, to get into the game at a cheaper price and hopefully have it sold in more almost mass market kind of places. So that's going to be coming out early in this coming year. So we'll see. I mean, we're doing what we can to, to keep the game around. It's very probably the biggest pleasant surprise I've ever had in the business because I love the game. This is my second favorite game of all time, Baseball Highlights. I can't stop playing it, and I made it. And when I'm playing it, I don't think of myself as the guy who made it. I just enjoy the game. So I mean, it's so for me, it's been really fun.
So BJ from Board Game Gumbo posted on our guild asking a couple of Baseball Highlights questions. The first one I'll ask you about is there are a number of ways you can play this game, number of variants. What is your preferred way? If you're going toe-to-toe with someone who has some degree of experience, what's your preferred way to play the game?
Okay, we sit down, we do three buy rounds without playing. We draw 6 cards, we count up the money, we buy, we put the new player on top of the deck, discard the other cards after throwing one into the minor leagues. So we're doing everything but actually playing the mini game. So we just leave out the play, but we still draft, throw out a minor leaguer. Then we draw the next 6 cards, and that includes the card you just took. So the idea of trying to get money early is still valid, or just trying to, get the best player you can, or that kind of thing. Any strategy is very viable in this process, and you do that 3 times. Now, that is actually available on the app if you just say skip the 3-game season. So the exact way I play when I'm sitting down to play a 2-player game with someone is the app version if you say skip the 3-game season. So you have 3 buy rounds and then you play a best of 7. To me, that's really satisfying. It depends, but 30 to 40 minutes when you know the game. So it's a really nice little game time. So that's my preferred way of playing with two players. Some players who I have, I have a lot of experience with over the years, like Ralph Anderson, who not only a good friend of mine for many, many years, but is the developer on the game for Eagle Griffin. We sit down and we start with just our start teams, and we'll play like the best of 13 games. And so we will include those first three count. I was never completely happy with the play 3 games for home field advantage, because as advanced players know, you can basically tank those games for money, and try to just get the money cards and then try to buy the really great players once you're playing. It was there to sort of be a way to learn the game first, So we have a brand new rule book. It'll be posted on Geek soon, and it'll be included in all the next print run. And Paul Grogan did it. And Paul was a guy who loves the game but couldn't figure it out because he didn't know anything about baseball. So now, of course, he knows the game well. But we said, listen, we want you to write the rule book with the perspective from somebody who doesn't know baseball. Because it turns out the game is very popular with people that aren't particular baseball fans. Once they discover the gameplay, they just like the way the game plays. So you don't have to be a baseball person to enjoy the game. But if you're going to learn it from the rule book, it's got to teach you enough to understand the cards and the interplay. So that's what Paul's done. We have a tutorial game in there where the decks stay the same, and you play by play to sort of learn the mechanic, because that little 3-way play that, I play, you play, I play, and then the other person goes. It's like a waltz, I call it. So that takes a little bit of time to get down. So my favorite way to play, though, with just two people is 3-buy rounds, best of 7. My second favorite way, and it's very close to my first, is any kind of tournament. 4 players is fine. 8 players. Oh, I love this game in a tournament format. So I'll go anywhere to play one of those.
Even Albuquerque,
although I got smoked in Albuquerque, but hey, that's the way it goes.
Yeah. Our buddy David, you went toe to toe with him, and he was very proud to have taken you down.
He crushed me.
Can I say I don't think I've ever played this game with you, Mike?
Boy, we've been at events together, but maybe Well, I don't know whether that we've been matched up yet, huh? So we should do that when we get. We'll sit down and play a match. When I'm playing in tournaments, quite frankly, when I'm playing as a designer somewhere, this is not an excuse, but I'm going to try fun decks. I'm going to try things I haven't tried a lot for purposes of, maybe an expansion could help this strategy, that, whatever. So I won't necessarily be playing my best, but I'm not playing badly. I mean, out of the cards that are available, I'm not going to be silly and purposely lose. So anybody who's beat me, a lot of people have in these tournaments. I'm certainly playing well. I'm trying to play well, but I'm also experimenting with different strategies. There is a meta game in Baseball Highlights, and the last few expansions, including these new ones, are trying to alter that meta game a little bit. And we'll see if there's a question I might expect. I mean, if we ever talk about clutch, I'll explain why clutch is what it is. But the meta game, and I'm not going to give that away for people who are still learning the game. But there is sort of a meta game way people think. And I think any of these games that happens, people say, oh, this kind of deck is just going to be stronger. But of course, in this game, you have to get the cards, and that's not so easy. And there's an answer for everything.
I can tell you that experimenting excuse is a Sean favorite.
Oh, for what? For Sean to use himself?
Yeah, he uses that all the time.
I find it helpful. Sure, when I'm sitting there, I'm getting trashed, and well, he's a designer. He doesn't know anything. I have to say something, so that's what I usually say.
Yeah, fair enough. So another question from BJ. He was curious about the process for naming players in the game. Is there? I'm sure there's a method to the madness, but what is the method to the madness? Obviously, you have current and former players who get into the mix there. How do you pair them up or mash them up?
Well, that has changed since the first set, right? So when I presented the game, what I did was I went through the Hall of Fame player list and a few players at the time, but mostly I wanted to bring back the nostalgia with the first set. So I went through the Hall of Fame and I tried to make matchups that were thematic. Like if it's a cyborg player, I would get a couple of pitchers' names like Juan Spahn, for Juan Marichal and Warren Spahn. And I tried to get them. Sometimes they would sound good together, I thought. So I thought Juan Spahn would be a good one. Mickey Maris, those kind of things. But that's hard to keep up. That's hard to do consistently. But for the first set, that was my approach to try. And of course, the company loved naming players. So they'd come in, well, this one's not very good. How about this? And so there was a lot of time spent coming up with fun names on that first set. Then I discovered, when the expansions started, the requests for expansions started coming in, I'm thinking to myself, oh boy, I'm going to have to do this for a lot more players. So now what I do, and I've done this pretty much for all the expansions, I go to the fantasy, the most popular fantasy baseball players in fantasy leagues. And I find that's an interesting one because hopefully these are players that some of the fans who are into baseball would enjoy, would know the connection. So, and there I don't always get a name that matches, but I try to get the names that are important in there. So that's the way I do it now, and work pretty well. For robot names, Ralph's really good at that. I usually make my attempt, and he'll sometimes be inspired by something I did do, and he'll come up with a better take on it. But the cyborgs and the naturals are, famous player mashups. But I can't say there's any more science behind it than me looking at the list and I try to get the player, the position feel or the player together in some way. And occasionally one sounds good, even from those lists that I can use.
Hey everybody, the Dukes have created a Patreon account. This lets you support the Dukes of Dice podcast by pledging a small amount per episode we produce, as little as $1 per episode. Your support helps defray the cost of web and podcast hosting, review copies of games, and with enough support, getting the Dukes to major conventions. There's some great benefits, including early access to episodes, shout-outs, and more. With enough support, you'll help us reach milestone goals, including YouTube Q&A sessions, Google Hangout sessions with industry insiders, and board game media personalities. Please consider supporting the Dukes of Dice podcast. You can check it out at patreon.com/Dukes of Dice. Thank you so much for your support. Game on! All right, I got to change gears, if only because Sean will give me dirty looks if I don't. So,
yes, you will.
So Wayne Walker had a couple of questions. He was curious, and I had not tried this one. I know Sean gave this one a try. The cribbage-inspired game, and he thinks Scoreboard might be the name of it. He's curious what the status of that is.
Yeah, so am I, but scorecards, yeah.
Close.
I can share. If you're going to be a game designer, you have to realize some of your games won't go to won't be published right away, even by a company. So I'm not going to name companies, but I will say that a company took the game right away and they loved it. They loved it. But during the time between that and sort of getting in production, some things changed at the company. So the game ended up coming back to me. So I continued, and they had said a few things about the game. Some of the people at the company said, well, maybe it's still fiddly, maybe this isn't the best. People who hadn't played cribbage. I mean, I tried to de-fiddle cribbage a little bit, make it smoother, but still it's fiddly compared to a modern game. So I took it even further. I said, no, let me make it stand up, even if nobody knows what cribbage is. So I worked more on it. I think I have it down now. I think it's good. Smooth, but it has no theme. And this is a big issue I'm finding. It doesn't have a theme that can wrap around it. So again, I'm finding I'm playing it with companies. They enjoy the game, but it's not for them because it doesn't have a theme. And in the hobby market, this is, right? So they say you should go to mass market with this, a mass market company. And I may end up doing that, but I think the game takes a little more to play. I mean, it's a little thinky. So it's not like Uno, for instance. It's a little more than that. So I'm not sure how that would go. It might end up being right in the crack. But I'm still looking. And I do believe it's going to – every game I've designed has been published eventually by somebody with varying degrees of success, I must say. Sometimes they don't do well. But I am trying with this one. It's in the line of how I like to take a traditional card game mechanic or mechanism and make it a little more modern and different in some way. So that's where that is. I'm enjoying the game a lot. People enjoy it when I play with them. It's fun, I think, and I think I've done all I can do to it. You reach a point in design where, this is pretty good. I get to the point where if I'm going to make more changes, I think it's going to be to the detriment of the game. So I sort of like where I am right now. So I do expect it to get published. It's just a matter now of me finding the right company, that likes it and that could get it into more of a mainstream market.
All right, so just go to Fantasy Flight, tell them to make it a Star Wars game, and I think you're good.
Yeah. Well, I have been, all kinds of themes have been told to me, and I said, that's not it. If I'm going to do a theme, I'm going to do like baseball highlights. Everything in baseball highlights came from the theme. Everything. And so there was no mechanism that I said, I can't wait to use this mechanism in a game. Let me try it with baseball. I said, I'm doing a baseball game. So a game that will feel like baseball, but hopefully be a good, quick-playing game. So that's what I ended up with, but it all came from the theme. Whereas scorecards, I just wanted a fun family card game that paid homage to the best thing in cribbage, which is, to me, the fact that your same hand of cards scores in two entirely different ways. So I did that in the game. That's really the only thing I borrowed. But the rest of it is just a card game. And, there are games out there that are just card games. So hopefully it'll find a home.
All right, on to another project, Dragon Island. Chris Schreiber was curious about the status of this one. He had played it as a prototype at Unpub and was curious how it's developed since then and kind of what its status is since then.
I'm trying to remember, I think Chris may have been the person who came up with an interesting name at the time. I'm trying to remember if it was Chris, but it was at that table. And somebody came up with Manifest as a name for it, which I thought was interesting because you're discovering an island and there's a lot. You get a ton of mana or energy, things you just get a ton of it. And it's how you allocate and what you decide to do with it. But Dragon Island will be coming out supposedly, and I always say supposedly because that's our intentions and the company's intention, but things happen, right? But it should be coming out at Gen Con 2017. And it's with R&R Games, and they're doing a beautiful job on the board. I've seen the art for the tiles. They're making nice dragon molds. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Game is testing well. I have made a couple of changes, and I'm always working on the game till they say, we're hitting the print button tomorrow. Do you guys, and they tell me in case I think of something at the very end, that maybe should be altered. But yeah, it's testing well. It's certainly what would I call it? Lower end of medium weight. I mean, it really is a euro, but it's going to feel. It has things in it. It doesn't have dice and stuff, but it has things in it that are like an adventure game. There's some discovery going on. Yes, and that's going to be fun. It's funny because what I did with that game, since I started designing it, a lot of games have come out doing the same thing. So the same idea. So I think that people, great minds think alike, or maybe not so great minds think alike, whatever. But the idea is everything you do in the game can help everybody. So your decisions are really more based on, will it help me more than other people, right? And I think that's kind of fun. I used to say to people, you're guaranteed to play the thing that's going to lose the game for you. But at the time, you're going to think, oh, this works great for me, and then later you'll see, oh, why did I do that? So, but I think that's an interesting way to view a game as opposed to just working on your own little space. Because everything you do is the game space itself. So it's a game state game. There's several like that now, and I think they're good. I enjoy them a lot, and I enjoy that thought process. So we'll see.
Chris was also curious about the Legacy game, which I have coined Mystery Rummy Legacy.
Ooh, what a clever title, Alex.
So what did you learn about developing a Legacy game throughout the process? And of course, what's the status?
Okay, well, the status is done and it's sold, and it's to a company, and it's when it's coming out. These things take a long time to produce. So, in a perfect world, it would be out at the end of 2017. It might be early 2018, but we're hopeful. Let's see how that part goes. But what did I learn in doing them is don't do them. They just no, they're silly. Do not do.
Okay.
I mean, I had to do one. I had to do one because I saw what Rob Davio did, and Rob and I talked about it a lot. And I asked him once, "Are you going to do a card game based legacy?" And he said, "No, but you should." He said, and I talked with Matt Leacock, and both of them agreed I can save time because I already have a game that could be legacied, and that appears to be the key. Certainly for Pandemic, it was. And Rob will tell you about the Seafall trip, and you just don't want to go there. I mean, 3.5+ years of agony because you have no game. And so you're starting with no game, and you're, okay, we'll do this, and then what happens next, right? And every idea that you get, well, where do I put that? Do I put that in the quote-unquote base game, or does this come later? I mean, what a difficult thing to do. So I admire Rob tremendously for doing a great job. I mean, Seafall is an amazing experience. It's long, it's heavy, it's different from any of the other, it's probably different from any legacy that will ever be made because of how difficult that is. So I enjoyed the journey. It was fun, but it was long and much more difficult than I thought, I guess, going in. I look at Fabled Fruit, a lot of fun, and I thought, gee, that's probably the smart way to do it. Something you can control a little bit more, a lot of fun. You can stop and start, etc. But because story is so important in these, my oldest daughter wrote everything in the legacy game for me. With my help, we came up with a story basically and started writing it. So, but it is done. What I'm trying to do is a game that has 2 levels of play. It has the linear story, but the real heart of the game is not linear. It's what happens to the players, and I don't have control over that. The players do. So I have all these things that happen when a certain player does this or requires this, and that changes the game. So a lot of testing is required so you don't end up in a corner, right, where you can't go any further. So I did control it enough, hopefully. Testing's still going on, and if I end up doing it right, it should end up with a different experience at the end for every group. And then you can take that ending state and play a regular game. So each game should be different. And it becomes basically a mystery rummy game at that point. And you'll have different elements in yours than the next door neighbor who did the same trip. So all that sounds good. Whether it's executed right, we will have to see in the end.
You'll have to find out.
I will. Yes, one way or the other, we will.
Early 2018, though, that could be a bit of a wait.
Oh, sure. I mean, I've waited. I mean, Dragon Island was licensed in 2015 at BGG, so and it'll be out in 2017 at Gen Con. So that kind of a wait is not unusual. And some companies are even backed up further, and especially if the project has a lot to it. But you never know. Maybe this project comes together much quicker. I do have a game. A scorecards could be done in 2 months. It's 40 cards on a board. A very simple kind of board. And I have a new one that I probably shouldn't mention it yet, but it's another quick one that could be out by Gen Con in 2017. So.
That one is the long rumored Quidditch Highlights 2082.
Yeah, yes, it is. Oh, yeah. I mean, everybody's expecting me to do more sports games. I have a couple ideas that I've been working on, but this started with a sport. It didn't start with let me do a game which can handle every sport. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't find there's nothing from Baseball Highlights that speaks to me that it could be just transferred to some other sport. There's one thing that I'm trying with one sport, but I don't want to disappoint people, but that may not happen. Of course, it may happen. There's one more, but it's just not that easy to do a good game based on a sport. I mean, it's not so easy.
Shuffleboard 2096.
No, there's a wait for that one. Yes.
Yeah, that one could be a bit. Let me think. Bocce 2243. Yeah, you could do a bocce game.
Yeah. Well, me maybe is making up a sport, just creating a sport rather than, because baseball is not really baseball, right? It's not a simulation of baseball. There's no outs, there's no innings, all kinds of things are left out. But most people seem to feel some baseball when they're playing it. if I made up a sport, I suppose, and I decide what it's supposed to feel like, right? You do whatever you want. So,
Fitzgerald ball.
let's see. Yes,
That's about all I got. Okay. All right. Chris Schreiber actually wanted to go back onto the baseball topic, and he was curious. Bottom of the ninth. How do you like that one? Obviously, do you and Daryl Lauder give each other angry stares at conventions?
No, we pat each other on the back. You kidding me? Every time I see Daryl, we do a little fist bump, because me, fantasy baseball with Daryl Andrews, and I think that has a co-designer too. But I know. But anyway, these baseball games are coming out. I mean, this has been one of those things that hobby game companies always said no to. Oh, sports games don't sell. But I think it's like we're all trying to establish a little bit of a niche market for sports in the hobby game industry. I love Bottom of the Ninth. I think baseball maybe had just come out, and I'm sitting at a convention playing Bottom of the Ninth with them, because Bottom of the Ninth looks at 1/2 inning, and it looks at the micro pitch by pitch, and it's done so well that the fatigue factor, the pitchers thing, it's great. And I've got a card in the game, so I'm in that game, so that's fun. But no, it's a great game. I think beautiful job. And again, the more games that are out there helps all other games, and especially in sports. Like, somebody may grab on the Bottom of the ninth, realize what a great game it is, and then because of that, they might say, well, let me try this baseball highlights, or vice versa. So these kind of things help everybody doing that kind of thing. So no, there's never been any evil stares. It's been, wow, you found a great way to do it, because the challenge is making what is a boring game to many people watching it, right? Getting away from a detailed simulation. So I did it one way. They did it by, no, we're going to really detail it, but it's only going to be for 3 outs. So I mean, it's really cool. It's really cool to see these things.
All right, last question from the Guild. Wayne Walker was curious about what goes into making up Pokemon starter decks, because I think folks don't necessarily know that side of things that you do. He was curious, are you given a list of cards that you can and cannot use? What's the process about that?
Process? Yeah, I've been doing this since Ruby and Sapphire, and I'm not an expert on the timing of this, but I think it's been 13 years or so. So I do four sets of the 2 decks a year. So the process has changed over the years. I mean, I'm one of the longest employees there, but I'm just a part-timer. I just do this on a freelance project basis. But it used to be they would have. I took over from Wizard of the Coast, so when they formed Pokemon USA, I became the guy that used to be Mike Elliott. In fact, funny story is Mike Elliott and I are the only 2 people who have ever designed a Pokemon PCD, because Mike did it with WotC. He was doing that as part of his job there, and then when it transferred to Pokemon USA, I took over. So it's a lot of PCD decks. But I'll start with what happens now. They send me the file for the entire set in a spreadsheet. So I put that spreadsheet into FileMaker is the program I use, where I can print out playtest cards, do all kinds of things. They tell me the 2 stars in the deck. So each deck has a star. And that usually comes from, I think, things going on in the video game, what the fans are into. Sometimes I think they look at strategy play, but I think it's more how well known the Pokemon will be. Sometimes they're brand new Pokemon, sometimes they're different versions of older Pokemon. Now understand, I cannot tell you anything in detail about any particular deck. It's very strong NDA stuff with Pokemon, as it should be, because people anticipate and they do everything they can to find out what's coming up, right? But I just will say that they tell me the stars, and then they give me this, and this is the part that's changed. They'll tell me, okay, in the old days they wanted 3 rare cards. They wanted a basic, about maybe 12 trainers, they'd say, and pretty much I would fill in the rest. I can't use EXs. I can't use the GX stuff that's newer. But so the highest I go is a stage 2, and I can only have one of those. So they give me a little bit of parameter like that. Now over the years, that's changed a bit. So right now, I can use more rares. It's much more flexible, let's say now, because I've done it so long. I think I can make adjustments if I feel the decks need it to play better because they want them to be balanced. And sometimes it's hard. One star is of one color, the other star is of the weakness to it. Let's say so with the secondary colors in each deck, I have to put together something that will balance. So there's a lot of, it's like putting a puzzle together. Very interesting. And then I play test them a lot. I'm just finishing up one now. I send it to them. They spend a day play testing it. And then we talk because they always will have some changes. And they have over at that company in Seattle, Pokemon USA, they have some of the greatest trading card game players ever. And especially Pokemon players, and they always come back. They're able to see things I can't see. This deck needs a little bit more of this or that. So we work together on that, and then they publish the deck. So it's a fun collaborative process, and for my part of it, it's like putting a jigsaw puzzle together. But I do have access to a lot of cards, but I know some I can't use, and I try to find a strategy for each deck and something that will make sense.
Have you ever played the video game?
Let's say that I have, yes, but I don't. I'm not a big video game player.
Have you ever watched the anime?
Yes, I'm not sure what that means. I've seen the TV show and I've seen the movies. Okay, so yes. Oh, yes, I have. Yes,
okay.
I definitely have done that.
All right, just double checking.
And my granddaughter, who's 7 now, is a big fan. So I taught her the game last time I visited her, and she jumped right in. She's good.
Excellent. Well, Mike, I know time is limited to some degree, so I will let you go here pretty soon. But one final question. Instead of ending on a ridiculous note, I'm going to end on a profound note. Mike, your top life advice tip for anyone listening out there?
Life advice?
Life advice. I'm broadening this way out.
Wow, because I was all ready for the sort of the game advice or something.
No. Come on.
About designing a game. Actually, they're close, though. Yes, life advice. Well, I think we all choose some kind of some of us choose a handle or something that will guide us a little bit. And I've done that. And so that's where it is for me. It has to do with Judaism because I'm in the process of converting to Judaism. But any of the faiths can give you these things of the way you should live, maybe, or what's good about how to live and how not to live. So I'm not talking religion here. I'm just talking life advice, like you asked about. So there's 2 things that I find that resonate with me in the covenants of Judaism, and I think they're in every religion at some place. But the idea is to be the best, for me, is to be the best person I can be. And one of those things that's very hard to do, all these things are impossible to do. You're going to misstep, we call it, and just do the wrong thing all the time. But not to speak badly about people. Like, in conversations, we're apt to talk, say something that's not good about another person we know or something. I feel that's bad. I really try not to do that. And on the flip side, what I do try to do is say something good to people. If there's something I really feel. I mean, if I have something good to say to somebody that I think is valid, I will say it. And I will not hold back because I don't think people hear enough good things. And I think the world will be such a better place if all of us could successfully turn that switch. Instead of bad things, say good things about each other and to each other. I think that little switch would actually mean a lot. And that's probably the number one thing. And right behind it, for life advice, be true to yourself. I mean, whether you're designing a game, whatever you're doing, listen to your own heart. Listen to the things you want to do. I mean, I ended up in 2 kind of crazy careers, radio and game design. I mean, they're difficult careers, but they spoke to me, and it's what I felt I wanted to do. And so I persevered. Now, rough times for sure. And if you do take those routes, understand there's risks, and you might need something to fall back on, or you may want to create something first to fall back on, all those things. It's life. But to make sure you answer yourself in your life will make your life a lot smoother. And, you get a little older, you learn these things the hard way sometimes. But that's it. I mean, say good things about people and to people instead of bad things, and be true to, listen to yourself, listen to your heart.
Perfect. Perfect way to end it. Mike, thanks as always. If folks want to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
Well, I don't know. How should they do that?
So Mike says don't. If you want to get in touch with me,
no,
don't.
No. I'm currently on Facebook and I'm on Twitter as what am I at Game No, it's Game Design Fits.
Yeah, at Game Design Fits.
At Game Design Fits. I'm not a big social media guy though, but I do look and stuff. But that's certainly one way. A lot of people know me, so connect with. I mean, I'll see you at conventions from time to time. Otherwise, let me design my games, and then when they come out, you can play them, and that's fine.
Mike is saying I'm too famous. Just leave me alone.
Yes, well, no, it's actually but there is something. I'm just not the most. There are some guys, and I think they do a great job. They're out there all the time. I mean, you can, they're everywhere. So I've tried it for this past year, and honestly, I don't know how comfortable I am with it, so we're going to see what happens. But here's the best way probably is to geek mail me at Board Game Geek, because I'll never stop doing that, and I get some very good emails there. And do you have to know something to be able to do that? What do you have to know? My name sort of on Geek?
I think if it's linked to your designer profile, I think they can find it pretty easily.
Okay, well, it's Mike Fitz. It's MikeFitz. So that's easy. If you want to just a geek mail me is probably the sure way, and there'll be no muss and no fuss no matter what.
Or just whisper into a copy of Baseball Highlights 2045.
There you go. I will hear you. I will definitely hear you.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, Alex. Thank you.